What is up, guys? Well, we have finally made it to the finish line. Dexter Resurrection Season 1 has now concluded with Episode 10 titled And Justice for All. And before I even get into the episode, let me go ahead and just celebrate the fact that I was able to completely stay off of social media for an entire week, despite somebody whose career absolutely depends on social media, and avoided all spoilers for this episode because some dickhead dropped the episode a week ago and in a Russian dubbed version, and spoilers have just been rampant in the comment sections. By the time I checked everything after seeing the episode, I had about 24 messages from people saying that they were spoiled. Please watch out. It's a shame that there's a lot of assholes out there that think that their thoughts on something is more important than people actually experiencing something. You can all go to hell. But anyway, let's talk about this episode, shall we? So leading up to this point, I have been on an extreme high with Dexter Resurrection. I walked in with very cautious optimism because of my extreme disappointment with the last 2 seasons and the last 2 attempts at closing out this show. And so I tried to be as hopeful as I could that they're going to learn their lessons, while also staying very reserved that this is the same people that gave us New Blood and thought that was a good ending. And for 8 episodes, I was just riding this high. Actually, for like 8 3/4 of an episode, I was riding this high of, holy shit, we are back, baby. This is like top tier Dexter yet again. And then we got the major death in the last episode at the very end. Spoiler alert, which why the fuck would you be watching episode 10 if you haven't watched episode 9? But Batista was killed. And I had said for most of this season, mostly in response to fans that were calling for his head, that if Batista dies, that could potentially ruin this season and maybe even this show for me, depending on how they actually execute it, no pun intended. And so I walked into this finale with some concerns and some reservations. Are you going to do something that makes that death feel earned and make it feel like a necessary plot point and not just a narrative reason for Prater to fit Dexter's code so that he can kill him in the finale guilt-free? Is there going to be some impact on Dexter as a character that is going to fundamentally change or affect him in the way that all the other deaths have not previously? There's got to be something in this finale to make sense of that, to make it feel earned for me, and hopefully close out all the storylines in a satisfying way. And as a nice little bonus, maybe tease or give some suggestion of some really cool or crazy things that are going to be happening in the future that we can chew on over the next 10 months, waiting on season 2. And with those being my expectations, what I can tell you about this season finale is that after sleeping on it, I'm satisfied, but I'm definitely underwhelmed. For me, this was an incredibly straightforward, linear, tame, unrisky finale. And after they took such massive swings the last 2 seasons and absolutely fell on their face, there's something about that that actually feels like a step up, which is kind of sad and is more of a reflection on how bad those previous 2 endings are. But I can't help but feel like there was potential to do a lot more with this finale that could have made it a bit more explosive, a bit more eventful, and give us a little bit more to discuss. Because for a season finale, there's not a ton to talk about here, but we're going to do it anyway. So per usual, I will go through all of the events of this episode in sequential order. I'll stop and talk about certain ones and give my more in-depth commentary on them. And I am planning on doing a full season review that will probably be out tomorrow or Sunday, as well as a whole slew of Dexter rankings. I'll re-rank the seasons. I'll probably do like top 10 episodes, top characters, something like that. I'm not going to re-rank the villains yet until we get to another ending of this show, but we got some Dexter stuff in the future in store for you guys. So the episode picks up immediately where the last one ended, where Dexter has been locked in Prater's vault with the dying Batista, and it kicks off with Prater and Charlie on the other side of the vault, arguing immediately about the events that just transpired, where Prater is very clearly like riding a high and intoxicated about what just happened, mostly because he took his first kill, being Angel Batista. And then you have Charlie, who is very much upset at the chaos of what just happened. She's got a wound on her arm from Dexter's axe throw. She's bleeding. She's frustrated with how risky and how stupid Prater was in executing whatever it was he was trying to do there. And they decide that the best option is to just completely leave Dexter alone inside of that vault until he dies of starvation or dehydration, which is, I think they said 3+ days. Dexter immediately starts looking around for any kind of event or anything that he can use to actually escape this room, finds nothing, and so he ends up finding himself a little bit shocked when he calms down for a moment, sees the body of Batista, who is definitively dead at this point. I know there's been some people that have held out hope, like, he wasn't really shot in any vital area. No, he's fucking dead. And so he looks at his dead body, and he looks over at this weapon that looks like maybe it was the noose that killed Mia. I'm really not sure, but it was like a bed sheet noose that he takes and he unrolls and he uses it to cover the body of Batista, which immediately starts showing these blood stains, which I thought was like a dream thing because he wasn't bleeding that profusely. But nonetheless, he does that. He reflects on Batista being a good friend, a good cop, and a good man, very much in regret of the fact that he just lost his life. And then you hear a familiar voice from the distance, and Brian Moser, the ice truck killer, Dexter's brother, is now appearing to him for the first time since, I'm pretty sure, season 6. And immediately starts to kind of go through the same dialogue exchange with him where he starts berating him for his constant refusal to learn his lesson that he is not able to have a normal life without causing death and destruction around him. And I'm going to get more into this whenever I'm talking about the episode overall, but there's a number of things like this in this finale and in this season overall that really feels like we're continuing to retread the same ground. So it was cool to have Brian Moser back. I always enjoy seeing him, especially whenever he's in his darkest and most vengeful place. It makes sense why he would be there and not Harry. But yeah, starts to berate him about things that he's been berating him about since season 1. And there's a moment where Dexter, kind of as a rebuttal to his brother, says, then why does this death hurt so much? And from what I can tell, that's going to be the only bit of actual reflection that Dexter has on the death of Batista. That is the moment where they're going to tell us, rather than show us, that Batista's death is somehow a bit more significant of a wound in Dexter than all of the other ones, Rita, Deb, everybody else. And that's not enough for me. There's nothing else in this episode that continues to go back to that. They didn't do anything by the end of the episode to give me faith that in season 2 onward, Batista's death is actually going to be some significant change in Dexter's character. And so as of right now, with the information that I have, I'm pretty much solidified that I am not a fan of Batista being killed. Not just because of all the reasons that I've said in the week previous, where I think that there's so much potential left on the board, and it feels like they jumped the gun and just took care of that storyline way too early, and there was so much more to do with them, just like with Dokes. But if you were going to make his death feel significant and earned, it has to be something that fundamentally changes, affects, evolves the character of Dexter. And they have given me no signs whatsoever that that's actually going to happen. So Batista at this moment seems like he's just going to be another significant death in this series that seemed very silly for the character's perspective and seems like it's not really going to mean a whole lot in the overall story and, more importantly, the overall character of Dexter Morgan. And that's a massive disappointment for me. They wrap up their conversation, and then we immediately get the Dexter Resurrection title card. And I don't believe I've ever addressed this in one of my recaps and reviews, but slowly throughout the season, with each subsequent episode, they have zoomed out on the logo to show that the Dexter Resurrection logo is actually stamped in a New York manhole, which by the halfway, 2/3 point of the season, we all know that the New York Ripper's weapon is actually a manhole hook. And this one shows a fully zoomed out manhole cover with Dexter Resurrection, a bunch of police lights and blood, almost like a crime scene. So are they really trying to hint that season 2 for sure will be the New York Ripper season where Dexter is going to be facing off with him? I'm not sure at this point. Like, that has always been my speculation. That has been one of the reasons why a lot of us online that talk about Dexter have been speculating so hard and doing these theory videos and really trying to have some fun with the New York Ripper storyline, despite it being very minimal in this season, because it feels like they've given so many hints that this is eventually going to mean something. The jury's out on that one as well. We'll get back to it. But Dexter starts to use all the available weapons in this room to try to escape. He grabs a chainsaw at one point. He's using the New York Ripper's hook to try to pry the door open, to no avail. And then Batista's phone rings, and it's Smash Mouth, which, if that was supposed to be a joke, it really didn't land for me. I'm not ready to laugh in the aftermath of Batista dying. That didn't work for me if that was meant to be a big joke, that Quinn's ringtone is All-Star from Smash Mouth. And beyond that, The fact that they locked Dexter Morgan in this room, the Bay Harbor butcher, trying to make him die of starvation and or dehydration, but they left Batista's belongings, including a cell phone, in the room with him. That's one of the most contrived things I've ever seen in Dexter. Certainly one of the most contrived things that we've seen this season. As soon as he pulled out his cell phone, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you can explain it away by saying that Prater was not expecting it to go the bad way and not expecting him to, try to blow up this offer that he has given him and them end up killing Batista and locking him in there. You can say that, but unless we're to assume that Prater is just a fucking moron, and there's certainly some evidence for that if we're going to go that route, it still seems like an extreme stretch to me that he would set up this room knowing that there's at least a chance it's not going to go his way and still leave his belongings in that room. Like, they had to know if it goes bad, this is our plan. We're going to get the fuck out and shut the door. So I don't know. I thought that was ridiculous. Nonetheless, Dexter looks and sees that Quinn is calling Batista, and he sends it to voicemail, and then he listens to the voicemail, and it's Quinn saying, hey, what the fuck you doing in New York? I got a call from this detective. You need to get your ass home. Oh, and the real reason I'm calling you is that I can't stand Masuka. And then he cuts it off, and Dexter says, I miss them. Okay, nice little moment there. Does that hint directly that Quinn is going to be coming to New York in season 2 once the word of Batista's death gets out? I think that's pretty much a safe bet at this point, but there was nothing to directly tease that. It's just something that's this lingering thing that probably is going to happen. It's the most obvious direction that they can go. So he listens to that voicemail and then calls Harrison. Meanwhile, Harrison is continuing to eat out his new girlfriend, Gigi. That boy puts in some work. He is all about her pleasure. That a boy. But yeah, so he's going down on Gigi, and he keeps ending the phone call because it's Batista. Then eventually she picks it up and she's like, hey, Harrison can't talk right now. His mouth is full of me. And then, of course, it ends up being Dexter. So cute little moment there. He goes in the bathroom, takes a phone call from his dad. And I did like the moment where Harrison's like, why are you calling me from Batista's phone? Because the last time you called me on a cop's number, he's like, yeah, I know. Logan, listen to me. And he tells him what happened. And he tells Harrison, you need to help me. I'm locked in this fucking place. I can't get out. And this was the part of the episode that I actually liked the most, which is like Harrison going on this James Bond mission, where Harrison calls his buddy who in the last episode said, hey, we got a job opportunity to serve at this little gala for Leon Prater. We can make a shitload of money. And he says, no, because he knows what's going on with Prater. And now he calls his friend and says, hey, that job's still open. And while he's figuring out all of that, Dexter finds this drawer full of all of these files, which is presumably all of the serial killers that Leon Prater has at least interacted with or has knowledge of, knows their secret identities and all that kind of stuff. So he's fingering through all of it. He finds files for everybody that he's killed this season. And then he finds one that is Charlie's, and it's Charles Brown. So again, a little witty piece of humor where they're like, oh, Charlie Brown is her name. Kind of fell flat for me, but whatever. It's a moment. It doesn't like ruin what's going on. He starts looking through that file and finds out that she is the one who facilitated the in-prison hanging of the Lady Vengeance character, and Prater has kept a log of all of the criminal things that he has requested her to do as like a failsafe. If she decides to leave or tries to fuck him over, he's got her dead to rights. And then, of course, he finds his own file, and Harrison ends up inside of the gala as a server. And he's got his little earbud in, and he's got his dad on FaceTime in his pocket. And so it's just like Mission Impossible or James Bond, where Dexter's trying to guide him through the crowd and tell him where to go to get to this little secret penthouse. And there's a couple moments where it gets really tense, where he's serving and Leon Prater comes up and he's like moving to the left. He's like, don't worry, Dad, nobody ever notices the help, which was a cute line. Prater doesn't notice him. He eventually gets into the kitchen, tries to go upstairs, immediately meets a security guard who starts questioning him. And then he uses his friend as a little patsy, a distraction, and says, hey, that guy over there is high as fuck. Can you go take care of him? And ends up upstairs just for Charlie to immediately meet him at the door and take a hold of him by gunpoint. And then Dexter and Charlie have their little on-phone confrontation where Dexter sends pictures to her of the files and says, hey, you'd be surprised how many cops leave their airdrop on. I can end you with literally the click of a button unless you let my son go and open up this fucking vault. And Charlie, being very smart, says, no, I'll let your son go, but you're going to stay in there. So you can choose. If you decide to fuck with me, you know what my skill set is, you know what I'm capable of by reading my file. I will find your son tomorrow, next week, a year from now, and I will fucking torture him to death. And so now Dexter is in another spot where he's kind of in a lose-lose situation. And Charlie's very pissed off at the fact that Prater has kept all these tabs on her, and now she's officially done with him. I will say that as much as I really liked Uma Thurman's performance in the last episode, her performance in this one did feel slightly overdone, like where she's trying to be super intimidating, and it didn't quite work for me as well. But she goes downstairs to confront Prater while Dexter is still stuck in this vault. And he was looking through the files, found the file on Cooper Morris, and saw that there is an 8-digit number, which is the death date of Prater's parents, which is also the date that he is holding this gala. And so for Dexter, it just stands to reason that this is the code, and he only has one chance to punch in this code. If it's correct, he gets out. If it's incorrect, the whole building of cops comes upstairs, and now he's fucked. So he has to be positive. And he's 99% sure that this is the date because it's something that Prater will never forget. So he has Harrison punch in this date, gets to the last number, and notices over to him to the side this little secret compartment that holds all of his pen pal letters to Cooper Morris that he was sending in prison, and notices that his prisoner number at the bottom is also 8 digits. And so he toys with it for a second, and then he tells Harrison, delete everything, we're going to try this other number. And they put in the number for the prisoner, and just as he's about to tell Harrison to punch it in or to hit submit, the phone goes dead. And so you're left waiting for 30 seconds or so, wondering if Harrison's going to do it or if now Dexter is screwed and got to figure something else out. And then the vault door opens. That code worked. And they get to re-embrace as father and son. And I really did like, at least for a temporary footnote, where we ended things with the characters of Dexter and Harrison, where Harrison very much is trying to protect his dad, trying to save him. Dexter very much trying to do the same thing for Harrison, trying to get him out of harm's way. You know, there's a point where they're trying to just go ahead and leave, and he realizes that his thumbprint little device, the little piece of skin, the fake skin that he made, is missing. And so he's like, I need to go back in here and get this thumbprint, but you get the fuck out of here. Like, you need to be out of danger. And Harrison doesn't want to leave him, versus 10 episodes ago where he shot his fucking dad. So, you know, one of the biggest pieces of this season that was a huge pleasant surprise is how much they sold me and bought me in on the character of Harrison, because in New Blood, I could not stand his character, and especially by the end. Like, the prospect of a Harrison spinoff after Dexter's death in New Blood was like, absolutely fucking not. Content, views, be damned, I'm not watching that shit. And within 2 episodes of Dexter Resurrection, I was like, you know, they're turning him around for me. By the end, I'm actually fully bought into Harrison as a character. But I like the moment where Dexter is about to go get the thumbprint. He tells his son to leave, and he tells Harrison, like, hey, I'm really glad you didn't kill me. And Harrison says, me too. That was a really nice moment for me to, like, bring things full circle from where we were in the last 10 episodes. But Dexter's digging around. He eventually finds his thumbprint on Batista's body. Batista's body gets just used a lot in this episode, which I don't know how I feel about that. It feels a little disrespectful to me, but nonetheless, I guess I'm higher on the character Batista than most Dexter fans. But he grabs the thumbprints, and then he goes over to the pile of files, and he grabs a bunch of them. And Harry's ghost is like, what are you doing? He's like, they're mine. I want these. And he grabs the Bay Harbor Butcher trophies. These are mine, too. And fucking leaves. And so he goes to exit, uses his thumbprint to kind of secretly get his way out. And Harrison ends up on the floor, where at this point, Wallace and Oliva, the 2 detectives, have arrived on scene, probably a good couple scenes before this. They've arrived on scene. Wallace never wanted to go, but she decided to go out of obligation, I guess. And so he has so many people in the room that they could point him out and see him and realize he's not supposed to be there. Prater, of course, and then Wallace and Oliva. So he's trying to get out without spooking any of them, and ends up bumping into this waitress. She drops all these drinks, which causes a little bit of a distraction. He moves to the back and hides behind this plant, and Wallace and Oliva move out of the way. And then when he decides to make his move, Prater clocks him immediately. And he's introducing this big fundraiser, ends up handing it off to like the police chief, and then runs over to his security, figures out where Harrison is and where he's heading, and, you know, cuts him off and holds him up at gunpoint, takes him right back upstairs to the penthouse. And so just as Dexter is like, you know, salvation is this close, he's almost out, he gets a phone call from Harrison, and it's Prater's voice. And so he immediately has to turn around and go right back upstairs. And this was the most like pumped moment of the entire season, because we got, or sorry, the entire episode, excuse me, not the season, where we get this great needle drop. Dexter's heading back upstairs with the fucking knife in hand. He unsheathes it inside of the elevator. This would be so much easier if I didn't care about people, or whatever he says. And the best moment of the episode for me is when the elevator opens and the ghost of Harry is standing off in the corner, and he looks at Dexter and he says, "Get that fucker." And I was like, yeah, get that fucker, Dexter. I loved that moment. I got so hyped and pumped in that moment. Just for him to turn the corner and immediately it's like, oh, Prater's here with a gun. So situation plays out where Prater has Harrison at gunpoint. The Bay Harbor Butcher standing across from him. Prater basically says, hey, I just took my first kill, and now I totally understand all of you guys. Like, I've been learning and yearning to understand you and to get that feeling, that itch, that urge. What did you call it? And now I have it, and it's intoxicating. I have to do my first proper kill, not this impulsive kill back here. And so Dexter decides to try to mentally manipulate him and says, hey, you want to have a true, like, indoctrination moment? My son's not going to mean shit to you. You can take me. Drops his knife and says, you can kill the Bay Harbor Butcher as your first kill. And Prater's kind of listening, like he's somewhat considering it, the same way that Dexter kind of was somewhat considering his deal in the last episode. And then Prater says, yeah, but I can't leave a witness. So it's very clear he's not going to listen to Dexter. And something that I absolutely called from the last episode, as well as my buddy Charles, we both kind of picked up on the same little detail, was there was a moment in episode 9 where Dexter hands something to Harrison and says, this is for protection, when he's clearly about to go fuck his girlfriend. And they specifically do not show what he hands him. And the fact that they did not show it made me think, oh, this is a play on words. They want you in that moment to think he's handing him a condom, and Harrison's like awkward reaction kind of sells that. But I bet you it's either M99 or a weapon. And so he looks at his son. He's like, I'm sorry I couldn't give you more protection. And Harrison pulls out an M99 needle, sticks Prater. Prater goes down. And then he tells Harrison, okay, we're good now. Now get the fuck out of here. I need to take care of business. And he goes and he straps up Prater. And we get one of the best scenes of the season where, it's always a pretty epic moment whenever Dexter finally has the big bad of the season on his table, and they get to have that little last confrontation, that last little airing out of their grievances. And what I thought was so brilliant in this moment was Michael C. Hall's performance, where he's literally mocking Peter Dinklage. Like, he's mimicking his voice and his cadence and things that he's saying, even the way that he kind of like covers his face in excitement. And it's a good thing that I enjoyed that side of it so much, because I have to be honest, I didn't really like how much of a crybaby pussy that Prater turned out to be in this moment. Now, it's not like a betrayal of his character, because there's been moments all throughout the season where he's been a little foolish and stupid. There has certainly been this manipulation side of him where he's using his position, his power, and more importantly, his money to control a lot of people that he obviously would not be able to physically intimidate or control. So it stands to reason that whenever he's dead to rights, he's a gigantic bitch. But there was something about it that disappointed me a little bit. Like, he's always been so cold and calm and calculated that, I don't know, there was something about it that felt like a little too hammed up for me, that he was just such a crybaby. But Michael C. Hall's performance in that moment definitely counterbalanced it, so I ended up liking the scene overall. So, Prater's desperately trying to offer him anything, money, whatever, money for Harrison to let him go. Dexter's not biting. He kind of lets him in on the origin of why he kills, which is what Prater asked for a couple episodes ago, actually one episode ago. So kind of giving him his last wish right before taking him out, and plunges the knife in. And, you have a moment when he's killing Prater where Wallace and Oliva are on stage with all these other cops, and they're waiting for Leon Prater to come down and announce what the fundraiser raised, and he can't be found anywhere, obviously. And she gets ready to leave out of frustration, and then all of a sudden, the Bee Gees' Staying Alive starts playing, which is the song that she's had in her headphones 4 or 5 times throughout the season as like her focus music. And almost like the Manchurian Candidate, it's like she's activated walks back into the dance floor and suddenly puts on this full-on like John Travolta performance type dance thing, and then Oliva joins in. I hated that. I thought that was such a hammed up moment that it totally threw the whole like flow of what was going on completely off. I understand what they were going for. You have this very bizarre, shut down, almost robotic character for 9+ episodes, and then you give her one moment where she actually gets to like be human and cut loose and just be the opposite of what she's been the whole season. I get it, but on its surface, it was a very silly moment, and I was just like, I did not need that. And also, not that it's like a big hang up for me, but like this music was very clearly used narratively as a focus song for her, like something that lets her focus on her work and see details. Now, all of a sudden, it makes her go into fucking boogie mode. It's like, that's a switch. That's a big major switch. So I didn't care for that at all. To me, I was like, I was holding back laughter. And that's, again, the attempts at humor in this episode really fell flat for me, where I'm like, we're post Batista's death. I don't want to laugh. And your attempts at making me laugh aren't very successful. Nonetheless, Dexter cuts him up into a few little bags, and this was a moment that wasn't really meant to be humorous, but just kind of ironically I laughed about it, is that there was just so much less for him to lug because it's Peter Dinklage. No disrespect, but I thought it was just a funny thing where, you know, usually he's got bags of people, and he's just like, whatever, and he just takes them out to the elevator. And he sees this picture where Prater is standing next to this guy in front of this big private charter boat, and so he pulls the body parts out in the bags, punches in the wrong code to set the alarm off, and then gets the fuck out of Dodge. And the alarm goes off, and all the cops in the building, which is basically everybody in the building, rushes upstairs and finds this trophy room with all these serial killer mementos, Batista's dead body in the corner, and the gun with Prater's handprints on it. And so clearly, they're going to put two and two together that Prater was not who he said he was. That's going to end up being his legacy, and they're not going to have any fucking idea where he went. I don't know if the Bay Harbor Butcher's trophies being missing from that room is going to tip them off at all, since he used and moved so many different things, although he did put them all back. Like, he put the axe back, he put the chainsaw back. There's a piece of me that thinks that might be like the one little thing, almost like the blood slide that fell into the grating at the beginning of season 7, the end of season 6, as something that sets Wallace and them on the path of pursuing the Bay Harbor Butcher, aside from the fact that Batista was pursuing him and then ended up dead. But nonetheless, they have all of that in front of them, and then Oliva finds the little piece of memento for the New York Ripper, which is the big manhole hook, and down on the floor there's a bunch of files. Wallace picks one up, and it says New York Ripper, and then it says the guy's name. And his name is Don Frampt. And Wallace has like this moment where she's like, oh my God, the cold case is finally solved. Now, as you guys know, I have done quite a bit of speculating on this New York Ripper thing. And I think a lot of Dexter fans have. This has been one of the things that we've been able to have the most fun with, even some frustration this season, and just speculate and theorize and come up with all these different ways that maybe it's this person, maybe it's this person. And there was always the possibility that it was going to amount to nothing, that was never going to be a significant reveal, or it was never going to be a reveal that was like this big shocking twist. It's just going to be a guy. Or what I thought was most likely, it's going to be teed off to next season, and that's going to end up being the big bad, and it'll be a totally new casting. It's not going to be like a twist reveal of a past character. Even though I very much have been the champion, one of the champions of the Jonah Mitchell theory, because I think that'd be a lot of fun. And in this moment, it's still possible that in season 2, the New York Ripper could be a significant character, that Wallace is going to be hunting whoever this person, Don Frampt, is, or maybe it's he's living under a false name. There's no record of anybody. Maybe it's still going to be paid off. But they did it in a way where if they don't want to go that direction, presumably the New York Ripper thing, that was the payoff, is that, oh, she gets the name and now she's at peace. And if that's what they end up doing, that is a massive disappointment. I did a ranking, And near the bottom of my list, only being trumped by Joey Quinn, which I thought was a ridiculous theory, at the bottom of my ranking was the possibility that it's not going to be a reveal. It's going to be insignificant. It's going to mean nothing. And so in that moment when that's all we get is a name on a file and she's like, oh, cool. Well, we put that to bed finally. I have a little bit of fear and reservation that that's as far as this is going to go. We'll find out next season, I guess. But in this moment, it's like, oh, there's a lot of ways. Like if you're planning on paying that off, you could have at least teased it in a more significant way. If that's all we're going to get. No, thank you. And then we end the episode in the season with Dexter on this private charter boat out on the water, dumping Prater's body parts into the water and looking over this stack of files that he has, which is the identities and information for a half a dozen major serial killers, one of which being Al, the Rapunzel killer that got away 2 episodes ago. And it ends with Dexter kind of reflecting on how he'll never have a normal life, but people like Blessing and Harrison will help make him human. And he ends with a note saying something like, I'm Dexter Morgan. I'm exactly who I should be and who you want to be, which is like a fourth wall breaking moment of like, I'm back, baby. And then the season ends. And what I will say is for that final moment there, for the big end point of the season to be Dexter reflecting and thinking, I'm probably never going to be fully normal, but at least these relationships that I've built are going to help make me human. That is something that they have been redoing and redoing and redoing since the beginning of this entire series. And if there was one, there's a couple big disappointments that I have by the end of this season, but if there's one that's the most frustrating for me, it's the fact that we still feel like we're not doing anything significant to grow or evolve or change the character of Dexter Morgan. It feels like the end of season 4 and the beginning of season 5 is the last time that we have felt like there's been something fundamentally changed inside of him. And that was 6 seasons ago. There's been too many times where Dexter reflects on some relationship that he has and is like, this is the first time that I've felt love. And it's like, you said that before. He's looking at Harrison and even Blessing, including Blessing in that little speech is ridiculous. But okay. Harrison and Blessing, that's a relationship that's so strong for me that I'm starting to finally feel like I'm becoming a little human. So these 2 characters, they're the one that does it for you. They're the ones that finally start to tap into that humanity that you never thought that you had. What about Rita, Aster, Cody, Batista, Deb, Brother Sam? Should I keep going? Because there's literally 1 or 2 characters every season that he has said something to this effect about. And so now, if the overall storyline of Dexter Resurrection, however many seasons it ends up being, if it's not going to be Batista slowly getting the lead on Dexter and eventually finally bringing down and unmasking definitively the Bay Harbor Butcher for the world, since that is definitively something that we're not doing anymore, that is completely off the chessboard, then the most significant thing they can do to have a satisfying third attempt at closing out this series, whenever it is we're going to get there, is that you have to fundamentally evolve and change and grow the character of Dexter at a point where it feels like from episode 1, season 1, we have had this huge arc from who he was to who he is now. And in what way they decide to do that, I'm not sure. But they did nothing to set the groundwork for that in this first season. Like there was a couple different points where I think it was episode 2, where even the ghost of Harry is like, you're doing this to try to like save people. You've never done that before, Dexter. And I said in the moment, I was like, that doesn't feel right to me. He's clearly tried to save people before. Like, why are you pointing that out? Like it's such a significant change. And they didn't do anything for the rest of the season to like sell me on that being something monumentally different about his character. He feels like the same Dexter that we've been following since season 1 in that regard. So that is the thing now that I am looking for them to do some work on in season 2 onward, is if it's just going to be about the growth of the Dexter character, which we've been missing out on for quite a while, you better start laying some groundwork for it, because at this point it really feels like we're just recycling plot points, we're recycling character arcs, and that's going to get old quick. As much as I enjoyed the season overall, I know I'm starting to get kind of negative, but that is a big frustration for me, is that 11 seasons in, we still feel like we're watching the same exact character. Like, that's a problem. We need to recognize that that's a problem and don't let that sit and fester. So looking back, talking about the overall episode, like, it was fine. It was entertaining in spots, certainly got some good performances in spots. Like, it was a good overall episode of Dexter, but I definitely think it's a pretty middle of the road at best finale for this series. Now, we've had a couple of absolutely abysmal finales like season 8 and New Blood. We've had a couple seasons that feel like they kind of go out with a bit of a whimper. Like, I would compare this season finale as being kind of a bridge between what we got in season 3 and season 5. Season 3, we had Miguel taken out at the end of episode 9, which really felt like the ultimate climax of the season. And then the last episode was just kind of like tying up some loose threads, like the Skinner killer that nobody really cared about, him getting married, things like that. So it was kind of like an epilogue finale. Ends on a little bit of a quieter note. And then season 5 has a little bit more of an explosive element to it, with them taking out the big bad and having Dexter be on the table at one point, and then also having Deb come up and almost catching Dexter and Lumen while they're taking out Jordan Chase. But then they just wrap everything up with a nice little clean bow. Everything's resolved. Joey Quinn's absolved. He's not chasing Dexter anymore. And it should not have been a safe ending. They should have had the ending of season 6 be the ending of season 5. The way that I felt about both of those seasons' finales is like combined here. It's the calm after the storm, which was the death of Batista, which feels a little awkward for a finale. And it also just ends very safe and very inoffensive and doesn't really take any big risks or make any big significant teases for the future, which makes it feel like we're just gently landing the plane and we'll see you in a year whenever we figure out what we're going to do. And I understand that with the amount of fan backlash that they have gotten over the last 2 series finale attempts, that they were probably gun shy to take any big swings. They were gun shy to do anything crazy or attempt to be clever, because they realized that the last 2 times we tried this, we absolutely stumbled and fell on our face, and the fans really hated us for it. So it probably was the better creative decision to just close everything out as safely as possible and have a satisfying enough ending without rolling the dice to potentially lose a chunk of our audience for the 3rd time and not have them have faith in us to come back for season 2 onward. I get that. I still think there were some things they could have done that wouldn't have been that big of a risk to make this episode feel a little more explosive. Like, it's the most predictable thing in the world to just have the storyline be, oh, Prater's the big bad, we need to take out the big bad. And that's the only thing of significance that happened in this episode, is that Dexter got Prater. And it all took place like basically in 2 rooms. So it wasn't like a very eventful episode. But the fact that there's really no immediate threat towards Dexter, whether it's Quinn, Wallace, the New York Ripper, anybody else that Prater knows that we can anticipate for season 2, the fact that even though I liked the character interaction between them, there was no like re-embrace between Dexter and Harrison after everything was resolved. It just ends on the boat and Harrison presumably gets back safe. The fact that the New York Ripper thing kind of went nowhere, that they didn't tease like that he was back or there's a new killing, or that Prater contacted him and said, yo, the fucking Bay Harbor Butcher's in New York, get your ass out of retirement and come fuck him up, and then dies, but he's already set the shit in motion. Like, there were things that they could have done to have a safe episode, but leave us with a little bit of excitement by the end of the episode. Like, oh shit, what's going to happen with that? Like, this show at its best is when it does that. When it has a finale that is able to close out all the storylines, take out the big bad, close out whatever's going on with Dexter as a character, but also leave us with something that's incomplete or dangling or immediately introduced as this new struggle or threat that we get to stew on and go, oh, fuck, what's going to happen? I can't wait. Like, that's the feeling that I wanted with this episode, and I just didn't get it. And I think part of the frustration with that is not just that it wasn't as emotionally or heightened or exciting as I was hoping the finale would be, but I really don't have any idea where they're going in the future, and not in an exciting way. Like, there's something exciting about the writers doing something wild where you're like, holy fuck, what does that mean? Where are we going to go with that? I have no idea. That was a surprise. But this is the other side of that coin where it's like, this almost could function as a series finale. Like if they canceled Dexter Resurrection, this could somewhat function as a series finale of like, oh, he came back from the dead, Batista was taken out, and now he's just going to do his thing in New York forever and always. And there's no direct influence of where they're intending to go. The only thing that we kind of have to chew on is this list of names, but it's all, except for Al, all a list of characters that we don't know. And of course, we know no matter what storyline they're going to go with a year from now, he's going to have targets. He's going to have other people that he's taken out. He kills like 5 people every single season that aren't the big bad. So that's not a very interesting or a new or an exciting direction to go, is like, next year, Dexter's going to kill more people. Well, no shit. And of course, I discussed it. I won't touch on it too much longer here because I do want to save some thoughts for my overall season review. But the biggest glaring hole for me as far as like the stain, the thing that's not going to age well, I fear, about this season and an otherwise great season is the choice to take out Batista, especially in the way that they did. And I would have been ultimately more satisfied with this finale, even if the storyline was exactly the same, if they had just sold me more on the fact that Batista's death is actually going to be significant. It feels insignificant. It feels like yet another person that was in his way, that was chasing him, that somebody else took off the chessboard for Dexter. It didn't even come to a point where he had to be the one to make that hard choice like he was about to do with LaGuerta. I mean, whether it was Dokes or Quinn or LaGuerta, anybody that gets close to him, that they're this close to solving who the Bay Harbor Butcher is, and they've suspected him all along, and they're about to blow the lid off of everything. Every single time something comes out of the air, some other person who takes that problem away. Lila took out Dokes, and the Miami Metro basically took Quinn off the board because he was so scared to get tied to Liddy's murder that he just stopped chasing Dexter. And then LaGuerta, of course, Deb came in to stop him and ended up shooting her for him. So I didn't want to see Dexter kill Batista because I don't feel like that would have been earned. I don't feel like they did the work to earn that. I wouldn't have bought that. There's a way they could have sold me on it that I don't think this season was heading that direction. But the way that they ultimately did it, where just Prater shoots him, I don't know. It just felt like he was doing a really stupid thing in the moment. I've ranted on this enough. I'm not sold on it. I'm not a fan of Batista dying. And I wish this episode had done something to soften that blow for me. They absolutely did not. So that is the biggest frustration, the biggest concern that I have walking into the future is like, are we going to make that significant, or is this it? That's just all it was. It was just a shocking moment for a shocking moment. But yeah, nonetheless, like I said, good episode, a fine finale. Certainly if I was to rank the finales, which I don't know, I might do that, who knows. This would be in the bottom half. Not an offensive finale, but not an exciting finale either. They landed the plane, they've reset the stage, and that felt like that was their biggest goal. Let's dig ourselves out of the hole that we put ourselves in with New Blood. Let's reset the stage and the status quo as best as we can, where we're at least open to go in whatever direction we want to. But that uncertainty of where they're going and feeling like we've just kind of reset the stage to where this series has already previously been numerous times. I hope they have some very exciting things in mind for the future that's going to at least push the envelope or take some risks that pay off and don't insult and infuriate fans. I think they can do it. They've done it in the past. They just haven't done it recently. So Dexter Resurrection finale, satisfying, but underwhelming. Let me know what you guys thought about the finale and the season down below. And as I said, hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned. I will do a season review as well as some rankings. So stay tuned, Dexter fans, because tonight's the night, and it's going to happen again. Well, that's it for this one. If you guys loved that, please click over here for all of my other Dexter coverage. I've covered every single season as well as every episode of New Blood and Resurrection. I'm also going to put my ranking of Dexter's antagonists previous to Resurrection up here for you to check out. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.